Vince Vaughn is tapping into his Italian heritage to portray a real-life restaurant owner in the new Netflix film Nonnas. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my movie review for the new Netflix film Nonnas. This is streaming now and couldn't come out at a better time. Brilliant move marketing-wise on Netflix's part to put this out Mother's Day weekend, because this movie is all about uplifting and sending love to the older women in our lives, the grandmothers, the nonnas, and so smart move on their part. And it was a big hit on Mother's Day weekend, so it paid off. But we'll get into all this here in just a moment. First, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a subscriber already on Dan Reviews It, thank you so much for that. I love it when you guys return and check out my stuff. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell too, so you get the alerts for all my video drops. And you can just like this video or comment below. Of course, that stuff helps the channel out as well. All right, so Vince Vaughn. Now, I did not realize he was Italian. I guess maybe I should have, but I never really looked into his history and his lineage. But yes, his mother's father came from Italy, so he has definitely that Italian side to him. So he portrays Joe Scaravella, and I'm half Italian too, Scaravella. And we start in Brooklyn with this movie in the 70s, and young Joe is bringing in some food from the market for his mom and his nonna, who is making her famous marinara sauce, and they are about to sit down to Sunday family dinner. Huge in Italian culture, the big Sunday family dinner, and so he's just loving his life. This marinara sauce is just putting him over the moon. So we cut now to 40 years later, and Joe's mother has just passed. The nonna has long since passed, but now his mother is gone as well. And so he is stricken by grief. He gets this big load of money from the insurance company, the inheritance or whatever, the insurance payoff, and he doesn't know what to do with it. But his friends, the people closest to him, are telling him to do something for himself with this money. You're in a job that you don't really like. You're single. Your life is kind of in a rut, at a standstill. You've been caring for your mother for so long. Now it's time to care for you. And so he, thinks about what he can do with this money. And he decides the best thing to do would be to open a restaurant, and not just any restaurant, but one where he can highlight the love that he has for his own grandmother and for nonnas everywhere, and serve only authentic food made by nonnas themselves, with their own secret recipes, their own, handed down recipes and what have you. And everybody thinks this is a terrible idea. You don't know how to run a restaurant. Like, what are you doing? But turns out he already bought the place. So he just needs to fix it up and make it a reality. And so the story goes from there. We have a big Italian cast in this movie. So you've got, first of all, a bunch of Sopranos people. It's like a mini Sopranos reunion, because you've got Lorraine Bracco, Drea De Matteo, and Michael Rispoli, who all were regulars on The Sopranos. But you've also got Susan Sarandon, Talia Shire, Brendan Vaccaro, who, we've seen her for years and years. She was in Midnight Cowboy, I think, in the 60s. She's been around for a long time. And you also have, some younger Italian stars, Linda Cardellini, Joe Manganiello, and Joe Scaravella appears as himself, or not as himself, but as a guest at the restaurant in an uncredited cameo, the real life guy that Vince Vaughn is playing. So yes, he is very much still alive, and I'm sure he was a bit of a consultant or whatever on this movie. But this movie was directed by Steven Chbosky, who brought us The Perks of Being a Wallflower, one of my all-time favorite movies, and he also brought us the Heart Tugger Wonder from a few years ago. And this movie tugs at the heartstrings as well. In fact, I would say that's probably its biggest success, because realistically, script-wise and plot-wise, this movie is fairly by the numbers in terms of an underdog story. We can, as an audience, kind of predict all of the beats that are going to happen with the owning of the restaurant when you don't really know what you're doing. And yes, there's going to be, some ups and downs, and you're so excited, but then, this happens, and then you're excited again, and then this other thing happens. And, it's very, very by the numbers in that term. But the success of this movie lies in those emotional moments. I definitely cried by the end of this movie for sure. And it hit those notes for me very, very well. And it actually kind of came up on me. It was a bit unexpected because, yeah, I liked the movie, and there was, some humor, and I loved the family feelings. But there was a scene where Susan Sarandon takes the Nonnas to this hair salon. She owns a hair salon, and she talks about how she was 16 and started there, 15 or 16 when she started there, and she was just sweeping up the hair, and then moved up and moved up and moved up, and now she owns the place. But she's giving them these hairstyles, and it's the conversation that's happening in those moments. And it's, about not just, okay, they make great food, and sure, we love them, but they become more fleshed out, I think, as fully realized characters in that scene. And they're sort of talking about how, yes, the restaurant and Joe has sort of given them a new lease on life, and the ability to cook again is just love for them and all of that. But we also learn a little bit more about their backgrounds. Like the one Nonna, for example, hasn't talked to her kids in a long time, this strained relationship. We learn about that, and that for me was sort of the turning point of the emotional nature of this movie. And, I was tearing up there, but then by the end of the movie, I was full-blown crying. And so I have to say, any movie that can do that, can tap into that emotional sensibility, is certainly doing something right. So even if the plot is pretty routine, it obviously is doing what it's intended to do. And this is certainly like a mom movie. We talk about like dad movies, maybe, like The Accountant, for example. That's like a dad movie, but this is a mom movie for sure. But I really think it's for everybody. I mean, it's rated PG. It's very, very family friendly in that regard. But also, Vince Vaughn is not necessarily doing his Vince Vaughn shtick, which I don't mind. I mean, I'm a fan of his and whatever. But sometimes I could see how one might get annoyed with him doing the same thing every time, whatever. But he's obviously shown in other movies, his dramatic chops as well. We've seen that in, like Hacksaw Ridge, for example. But this is not like a straight ahead drama. He's definitely giving us some humor as well. And, there's even a little bit of a romance thing going on with him and Linda Cardellini's character. They have this rich history dating back to high school. And so he's definitely not doing his usual just sort of, fast talking and dry humor kind of thing. No, this is, slightly different from the usual. We've certainly, I think, seen this part of Vince Vaughn before, but this is not his usual mode. I think it worked very well here. So look, overall, yes, a bit routine, in its plot and everything, but I really have to say this was an enjoyable film, and maybe surprisingly so. I don't know what I expected, but I leave Nonnas with a B, and definitely check this one out on Netflix. All right, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. I'll see you next time.